Hey everyone, good evening, and welcome to part 7 of our presentation on how deconversion from Christianity changes us. If you're in the live stream, if you could, please just give me a quick note if you can hear me okay. I appreciate it very much. I think I'm coming through, but just confirmation will be good. And for those of you who are joining later, not watching the live stream, welcome as well. So glad you were able to watch the replay. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. Appreciate your confirming. And good to see you, Ed. And we're going through a series on how deconversion from Christianity changes us. We're just talking in no particular order about some of the ways that this experience makes us reflect and makes us better people. Hey, Stephen, wow. Hat trick today. Three times is the charm. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. So we're talking through some of the ways that Christianity has, influenced us, taken over our minds, and then when we escape from Christianity, we sort of undo the damage and unravel the knots. And sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's not. It's just a pure joy, but it's good to go through it. Sometimes it's complicated, sometimes it's straightforward, sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's complicated and complex in ways that you really need someone else's input for. All the above. But it's a journey. It's quite a journey, and it's good to be on it. So thank you all for being here, being part of it. Thank you for being part of my healing journey as well. Talking through these things definitely helps me to heal as well. And what it's about, helping each other out on this journey. So we're going to get started here. And the first topic we're going to talk about is how deconversion from Christianity makes you aware that religion was used as fear. I'm sorry, it's going to make you aware of how religion used fear as a substitute for intimacy. I was trying to type it in the banner there and say it at the same time, and it's a bit of a mouthful. But say that again. It makes you aware of how religion used fear as a substitute for intimacy. So I think it's a good place to start for tonight. We were told so many times, so many ways, that God loves you. But we were also told, at least many of us in the groups I was around, we were also told that he would torture you forever if you didn't love him back the right way. And I know I'm preaching to the choir in saying this, but that's not the amazing story of a loving God who wants a close, intimate relationship. That is like the textbook definition of coercion and abuse. I mean, pure and simple. This is a form of emotional captivity, and it has nothing to do with any kind of real connection. And that's why I say that when you go through this process, it makes you so aware of how they used fear as a substitute for intimacy. The illusion does begin to collapse for us under the weight of its own contradictions that are really cruel. But in a sense, to use a metaphor, it's like finding out that love letters, which we were told the Bible was, it's God's love letter to you, that love letters are actually just court-ordered subpoenas. And what we were brainwashed into calling the presence of God, the intimacy with God, the closeness, the relationship we have with him, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. That was basically just this hypercharged, trauma-triggered nervous system response to a threat, to a very spiritual and existential threat on our lives and on our eternal state. I mean, let's be honest about this. Everything about the relationship with God had this lopsided, tangled, intimate part of it that was basically just like lopsided power dynamics. He's got all the power and all the threats, and you're nothing but this groveling little ant in his hand that he can squash. It was intimacy in their preachments. We heard it so much. God just wants to be close to you, and this is salvation, that you should know God and his son, Jesus Christ, who he sent. But this intimacy was filtered through this patriarchal hierarchy, and it wasn't love. It was just us on a leash trembling. It's like a dog that's on a leash and it's got a master that's going to just beat it with a stick or something. Like, that's not love. That's not intimacy. And we got gaslit so many times by things like, he's Abba, call him Abba, Father, Daddy. But at the same time, they would say, yes, he's your Abba Father, but also he's this all-consuming fire. And he's this tender shepherd who loves his sheep, but he's also the shepherd who will separate the sheep from the goats. He's the lover of your soul, but he's also this king whose wrath must be appeased or he's going to get you. And we really, in our deconstruction and deconversion, often realize painfully that when you have love and violence in the same house, and that's basically what we have. We had love and violence in the same theological house, if I can put it that way. Your brain, in that context, begins to confuse your trauma-bonded obligation for closeness. I'll say it again. Oh, it looks like we got the main event here. Susanna's in the house. Great to see you, Susanna. Thank you so much for joining us. Now the party may begin. The party did not start until she got here. So Susanna's here. We are officially started now. But I'll say it again. When love and violence live in the same house, either the actual physical house or the theological house, your brain begins to confuse your trauma-bonded obligations and your trauma-bonded love dynamics. It confuses that with closeness. And, you had this disassociative survival instinct going on that, honestly, when you look at it closely, we a lot of times people compare it to Stockholm syndrome, where you've got these attachments that a hostage would form with their captors to avoid being hurt or killed. And sometimes you even see weird situations where the hostage falls in love with their captor. It's very strange. The mind does crazy things when you're under that much duress and stress and pressure. And it was all so beautiful to us. It's this paradox of God's love and spirituality and closeness, but it was not as much a paradox for us to understand and to fall at his feet and worship him and love him for it. It was more just like a bait and switch held together with these flowery surface veneer apologetics and a lovely pastoral tone of voice in King James English. And just like eventually you see through it. This is an oxymoron. This is a complete contradiction. And you can ask us to accept it by faith, but eventually we're going to see through it. They're theologically gaslighting you for years at a time. And it's designed, sometimes it works well, from their perspective, it's designed to numb the intuitive, natural protest that's going to occur in your mind. When you get abused, you're naturally going to say, this isn't right. I'm being abused. I don't like this. Stop. But they keep gaslighting you into thinking, especially when you're in it from childhood, they gaslight you into thinking, this isn't abuse. This isn't abuse. It's not. This is God. And that's where sort of a chronic cognitive dissonance can set in. Your brain can't reconcile eternal love with eternal torture. So it splits it into these airtight compartments just for you to keep your sanity. And eventually, once you start unpacking it, you realize it's again, got nothing to do with intimacy. This is emotional, spiritual, psychological blackmail. This is a hostage situation. You can have a nice church building. You can have a nice choir. You can have nice lighting. You can have coffee in the foyer. This is a hostage situation. How can you truly be close to someone that you're terrified of? I mean, what love story kind of begins with a threat and then ends with your coerced consent, again, under duress? These are classic textbook illustrations and signs of coercive control. It's fear in the part of the victim masquerading as intimacy. We loved our God. It was this sacred affection, but we were mislabeling it. We were misunderstanding it. We didn't have the words for it. And I say that a lot, but I think it bears saying we did not know how to describe what was happening to us. But how do you open your bruised and wounded heart to a being who says, I'm constantly looking at you, constantly judging you, constantly threatening you, and yet he's also saying, love me, or I'll burn you forever? I mean, imagine you're going to a counselor and your therapist there says, I want to do that dynamic with you. I want to tell you how to live your life, but if you don't, take my advice, I'm going to, whatever, beat you with a bat. They would lose everything. They would lose your respect. They'd probably lose their license. We call this psychological abuse, or I use the illustration of a lot of a man that's proposing to his girlfriend for marriage, and he wants her to be his fiance. And he says, gets down on his knee, "I love you so much. Will you love me? Can we get married?" And before she has a chance to respond, he says, "But by the way, if you do say no, I will do horrible things to you. I'll beat you with a bat, or I'll kill you." How is that free will? It's not, obviously, but we couldn't see it at the time. We just couldn't see it. It's indoctrination. That's what it is. There is no safety in that equation. There is no true tenderness. There's no true freedom. It doesn't matter how many syrupy worship songs we plug into this equation. If the foundation of any relationship is fear, it's not love. I mean, that's part of what how trauma bonding works. It's the psychological glue that forms when terror and this desperate affection get fused together in the same relationship. And this is where this Stockholm syndrome seeps in, where identifying with your smiling captor who's holding a gun to your head or a knife to your throat, but this smiling captor becomes like your weird friend and lover, and your survival mechanism becomes, okay, I guess you do love me, and I guess I love you back, and I guess we have a relationship. But you don't have a relationship with your captor, but your psyche is bending and twisting to protect itself, even if it means defending the very source of this this sanctified trauma. And many of us tragically really did think that this was closeness with God. We were gravely mistaken, but we thought this was closeness with the God of the universe. Excuse me. Because, our bodies and our nervous systems can't always tell the difference between awe and wonder, like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing, and sort of that paralyzing anxiety. I mean, the stakes were eternal. And we get confused about what we're feeling. We think that this heavy, sinking feeling in our chest of like, oh my goodness, there's the weight of the world is here, that's somehow like a divine conviction. It was just your nervous system flaring up, screaming red flags, quietly, but screaming in this, spiritual language. And we thought that the Spirit was working in us, and often it's just our hearts being frantic. And we were having sort of silent panic attacks. And we thought God was moving. We'd have tears even. I remember many times when I had tears in church, maybe not tears streaming down my face, but, tears in your eyes. Your eyes get a little wet over hearing a song that just, oh, God is going to love you and make everything right someday. And he's in control. And you realize that's not what it was. It wasn't God moving. Tears can also be reflective of terror and grief and suppressed confusion and an existential collapse, a feeling of hopelessness. And you mistake that trauma and these trauma responses for some kind of spiritual death. And nobody told us how to tell the difference. The difference is so the worlds apart, but you didn't know it back then. And when that confusion sets in and gets reinforced over time, and it's creating this spiritual PTSD, then even later, the sounds of these hymns and these Bible verses, they trigger this flood of gut-wrenching flashbacks. And there's a reason for that. You were in the Stockholm Syndrome relationship with a psychopath. And now, as we look back at it from this perspective, on this side of deconversion, and we reevaluate those moments, we start to hold these old memories of years in church and years in all this spiritual culture that we had. We sort of have this forensic approach, a forensic tenderness, where we're not looking just at what happened, but at what it did to us and what it cost us. And we're asking uncomfortable questions like, if a human relationship had these dynamics, would we call it healthy? Of, if you don't love me, I'll hurt you. If you question me, I'm going to say you're rebellious. If you leave me, you'll regret it forever. That's not romance or fatherhood or motherhood. It's not friendship. That's just psychological manipulation, pure and simple. And it comes down to eventually sort of an emotional terrorism that we would easily report to the police in any other context. But with God, we sing hymns about it. That's crazy. That's spiritual abuse. And it gets normalized because we're in it for decades from our earliest days. And I think I would argue that our nervous system is still carrying a lot of that like a ghost. And, we bathed the whole thing in reverence and these historic creeds. And, nobody flinched. Everyone just said, this is normal. This is normal. This is normal. This is good. You teach it to wide-eyed children. Oh, God struck people down for touching the Ark of the Covenant. God opened up the ground and swallowed people up with fire for worshiping the golden calf and, having an orgy. Like, whoa, like God means business. And we dress it up with things like Veggie Tales and, of course, the altar calls where, oh, it's so wonderful that so-and-so gave his life to the Lord. Discipleship seemed like such a good word. Just be a follower of Christ like the apostles of old. And they try to sanitize it. And when you really get down to it, it's just ancient terror that gets passed on to our generation. We were tying our deepest primal fears to our deepest childlike longings. And we said, God is love. This is God's love. And we were, we were taught to crave the hand that beat us and to feel guilty for not loving him more. That's what we do. We worship with a trembling flinch. And you imagine some kids that have been through that stuff where they literally have been through that physically with their parents or a teacher or something. Real intimacy would never rely on or incorporate threats. It wouldn't sort of hijack your attachment system, which is very delicate and can be easily manipulated by someone that, by people that are psychopathic. Real love isn't going to use that system and create all this chaos and then somehow relabel it as devotion and love. You had to have eternal loyalty. Like you are with God forever and ever and ever till kingdom come and then some. And it was basically just eternal cosmic blackmail. Real intimacy is voluntary. It is safe. It has mutual respect. It's not afraid of honest and inconvenient questions. It's not threatened by boundaries. Nobody's heart is won in a loving sense by threatening the other person. True intimacy, true love listens, respects, it breathes, and just lets the other person breathe their way. And it never asks you to shrink or diminish yourself. It never asks you to remove yourself, erase yourself to feel loved. It's nourishing. Real intimacy, real love is nourishing. And it's not going to activate the whole fight or flight or freeze or fawn response in our nervous system. It's not going to do any of that. And a lot of us have arguably some pretty serious childhood religious wounds, and our existential fears were very much weaponized in childhood. And I mean, some of us can still get triggered by that. And I think once we start to really feel and enjoy relationships in our real lives now, obviously we can't go get the real relationship with the real God, but we can experience loving relationships here, human to human, that will slowly heal us. And people can be trauma informed and have honest relationships. And you see that and you're like, these relationships, human to human, can be so much better than my relationship with God could have ever been. And like we said, once you see it, you can't see it, you can't go back. Not like you're trying to, but you're trying to heal. But healing in this context, it gives you a taste for things that you're just like, this is what I wanted the whole time. I just wanted to be safe in a relationship. I wanted someone to love me and not attack me. And I wanted to have some kind of embodied safety. I wanted there to be both ways. I wanted to feel safe and I wanted to give safety. There should be some kind of overarching sense of reciprocity in that. And you understand that love without fear with God is it's just not possible. You always deserved to have love and not be afraid. And with God, that was just not part of the equation. It was always a fear factor and or a reward factor. It was about what are you going to get someday, or what are you going to avoid someday in terms of punishment. It's not really God we're walking away from, because God's not there. You're not walking away from Yahweh or Jesus. They're not there. They're literary characters. You're walking away from a system of control, a system of abuse, and you're walking away from the way that they set this up as anxiety that you were supposed to appreciate and love and want. And when you see trauma theology for really what it is, and you get into the trauma recovery process, and you call things what they are, it's arguably one of the bravest and freeing things you'll ever do. You and I deserve the most intimate and the best relationships of our lives to be ones that never terrify us, never keep us tethered, never threaten us. So I think that's a big part of it for me, realizing again that deconversion changes us because it is really making us aware of how religion used fear as a substitute for intimacy. So that is the first topic I'm going to take on for tonight. I'm going to take on two more. The other two are going to be a little bit faster, but wanted to dig into the deeper, heavier one first. Let's see here. AL the Infidel says, love me to save yourself from what I will do to you if you don't love me. Yeah, very good way to put it. You don't see the abuse when you're in it, though. Yeah, and that is really true for both the God relationship as well as a lot of our human relationships. Or just even if we see it, we just keep thinking, it'll somehow magically get better. And it's sad. Yeah, we have a love-hate relationship with God and with ourselves as a result. It is so shockingly apparent. Good way to put it. Yeah. We had so many tears thinking we're in God's presence, and he's looking at the pain, and he's going to restore the things that have felt lost. The cost is time lost. Also the believing without real evidence, just trusting in what was studied and spoken by God's anointed preacher who interpreted because they were chosen and called. Yeah. I'm still coming to terms that I have religious trauma. Yeah, for sure. And the more we talk about it, the more we get the language for it, I think the easier it is to do some of that hard work and pull the roots up. Childhood trauma for sure. Well, I'm going to go on to the next section if I could. And this is going to feel a little bit, again, like I am preaching to the choir, pardon the pun. But I think this is a good one. Deconversion from Christianity redefines what faith even means and challenges whether blind belief was ever virtuous at all. And that goes for both what we believed before as well as what we would ever choose to believe in the future. But in Christianity, I think it's fair to say that faith was the crown jewel. Faith was everything. By faith, you're saved through Christ. And that gem of faith was passed down through the generations like a family heirloom. You definitely didn't question it. It was just woven into all of the verses that we'd see. The more blindly you trusted, the more you were honoring to God and praised, perhaps. But certainty was the way that this worked. And almost like the less that you asked or questioned it, the more you belonged. And on the outside of it, of course, faith without evidence to us on this side, it doesn't look like a virtue at all. It looks like you're vulnerable and easily exploited and duped. You're unguarded, and you can call it, some kind of strength all you want. But, that's really the psychology of indoctrination. It's converting your confusion into certainty. And that's on this side of it, you realize that's really sick. And again, it mirrors, a lot of this stuff's going to mirror abuse that we see in childhood and so forth. But being commanded to have blind faith and trust, it mirrors the trauma bond of an abused child who defends the parent who caused the pain. I'll say it again, this blind trust in some ways mirrors the trauma bond of an abused child who would defend the parent who caused the pain. This blind trust becomes the survival strategy of the spiritual hostage. It becomes like an anesthesia for your cognitive dissonance. It's numbing you. It's numbing your nervous system, even though you're hurting inside. And it's like God's favorite quality in us is gullibility. Our pastor, it's not God, he's not there, but our pastor, our Christian society, our Christian culture, and our family, their favorite quality in us is gullibility. You believe, right? You fully believe, right? You don't have any doubts at all that this is the word of God, right? Faith is the golden word. It's the magic ticket. It's the golden ticket to the Wonka factory. It just glistens in the songs and the sermons. We'd ask for, God, I believe, but help my unbelief. It's just the catch-all for everything, the catch-all explanation for why you've made any progress, and the catch-all explanation for why you don't make progress, because you don't have enough faith. And it's meant to basically deflect everything. It's your badge of honor. Everything else around you can crack. It can make no sense at all, but you still wear this badge of honor. I believe no matter what. I believe to the end. And that's your medal of honor. Your medal that's awarded for being silent even when there's abuse and even when nothing makes sense. Just have faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. And so we did. We had faith in a Bible that didn't make sense. And when things like genocide was praised and slavery was okay, they had this cold, scholarly detachment. Like, yep, that's part of what God commanded, but he's holy. You just have to have that faith, that sense of like, it doesn't matter what you think. It matters what God says. Well, how do I know it's what God says? You have to have faith. These cycles go around and round and round. And when your prayers go unanswered and you feel like you're not hearing from God, have faith. He's there. Every unanswered plea that we'd make, God, where are you? God, when are you going to show up? God, why does this make no sense? Just have faith. Even when pastors abused power and the church is falling apart and the church feels toxic, just have faith. God is using this for something greater. And it's like your inner voice was drowning in the toxicity and cognitive dissonance and screaming, get me out of this. And faith just holds you under the water. Or it's like your instincts are in the dark and they're begging for daylight to shine through. And you're told that daylight that you want is actually a demonic force. Just have faith. And faith was, of course, the answer to all the doubts. It was the magic bullet to everything. It was as if ignorance was somehow sacred. And asking good questions and being truly wise was utterly a threat to them and to their worldview, to their fragile theology. And we had people like heroes of the faith that never wavered. I remember reading or having read to me a story. I should know the guy's name, but George Mueller. One of those guys that was a missionary, and every day, he had this orphanage or something where every day he didn't have enough money for those kids to have food. And every day they said he'd pray. And every day, somehow, magically, a miracle occurred. The milk cart broke down right in front of the orphanage. And the guy said, look, you guys can take the milk because by the time I get this milk cart fixed and deliver the milk, it's going to be sour. So you might as well take it. Day after day after day for years, God just magically provided. And if you could just have faith, the faith of a mustard seed, it'll give you so much hope. It'll make everything right. And we admire those people, and we sort of held our theological breath for decades, suffocating and smothered with smiles on our faces. Like, I guess if I just have more faith, our certainty, even though we shouldn't have been certain, our certainty was held up as our strength. And you'd see marriages around you cracking. You'd see people grieving. You'd see life falling apart for people. You'd see teenagers pregnant and on drugs. And you'd think, this is the power of the gospel. This is the power of the Bible. And it's just is so much. It was like, have faith. God's doing something. God's going to take all these things that don't make sense and all this pain, and in the end, he's going to make it beautiful. And we would use that illustration of a tapestry where you weave it with threads and the backside looks kind of messy, but someday he will flip it over and you're like, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. Just have faith. These are the hallmarks of different forms of coercive control. And especially when they turn your doubts really into sort of moral failures. So you're policing your heretical thoughts before anyone else, needs to. This is internalized surveillance we've touched on before, but you're monitoring yourself. Eventually, no one else needs to even do it. Your mind becomes this constant, watchful prison guard. And you know that you are committing some kind of emotional, spiritual treason if you don't have enough faith. And every flash of reason that comes through, you just squash it, push it down, you punish it, you recoil from it. But again, going to the deconversion part of this, when you look at that reflex, what Christianity called faith was basically just a form of disciplined suppression. It was disciplined suppression of your discomfort. It was, things that were right in front of you to the point it's can you not see what's right there? And it's your knuckles proverbially got white, and you have these wide open eyes, fear-drenched eyes, and basically saying, I need you to believe the unbelievable. You must believe the unbelievable. You must bow to the absurd. You must explain away every contradiction. You must do theological somersaults all day long. It's called exegesis, and it's a beautiful part of Bible study. You must jump to these hoops. And we would perform them with this dutiful desperation because it was so fearful to think of what would it look like if I actually don't believe this stuff with my whole heart, not just a little bit. If you don't believe fully, that was scary as hell. And, they basically equated your confusion over this with, this is how you build trust in God. And they demanded that you adhere to this cognitive dissonance as a bit of a proof of your devotion. If you really love God, you will stop questioning. And again, your brain learns to split. So you can survive this contradiction between what you're told and the aching, trembling feeling that's going on inside of you. And I think it's worth saying that I think a lot of us had a form of rebellion inside of us before we ever knew it was happening. I've tried really hard to identify those times, and I haven't honestly done a good job of it for my own story, but I think through it a lot. But I think some of us can feel that there was a sense of flinching inside, whether it was your actual body or your mind, your emotions, something was flinching inside of us. And it was like this trauma was there in our nervous system. We were hypervigilant, we were exhausted, we were loyal to the core, to this narrative that caused all this pain, but we were falling in love with our captor. It felt like the only safe place. It was the only place that this, performance could occur, and everything was pre-approved. This is where we were. This was our home base. This was our cage. This is our cage. And when you begin to deconvert, you do start to ask these questions that were always covered up. Why is believing without evidence considered so noble? Why is it? Why is it noble? Why was Doubting Thomas not the good guy in the story? Why is unexamined loyalty elevated above your lived experience where you can test things? Why is skepticism framed as sin instead of discernment? And why is discernment so demonized unless it leads to the same old sanitized conclusions? Why are all these religions, especially Christianity in my experience, but why are these religions praised for requiring faith, but they're not really held accountable for what that faith protects? I mean, how many atrocities have been whitewashed over by religion simply because someone said this is sacred? Why would a God value loyalty to an idea more than an honest inquiry? Maybe a heart-wrenching inquiry at that, but an honest inquiry. Why would truth need to threaten you into loving it? And like, you're like, that's exactly what a narcissist would do. This is a cosmic narcissist with an eternal grudge. He's a celestial tyrant. He rewards obedience over some kind of true earned understanding. And why did we feel relief? Why did we feel so much relief when we stopped pretending that this was an abuse? For so long, we knew on some level, at least I like to think so and hope so, we knew on some level this was wrong, and we just shoved it down and ignored it. And the moment that we were like fully acknowledged, like, no, this is wrong. Faith is not a virtue, and this is part of a system of abuse and control. We felt so much relief. And that moment when the denial breaks, when you have, you were in the cognitive dissonance, and now you're in this like cognitive destruction where the spell dissolves and the nervous system has its first shot at a deep, intense honesty. Like you take the first deep breath in years. It's like, it's like if someone puts like a big weight, like a big stone on your chest for years, if you're laying down and you just, or a big backpack on you full of bricks, and you're like, you just can't breathe deeply. Everything is just a real shallow breath. And all of a sudden, for the first time, you can take a deep breath and, oh my gosh, this world feels so much better now that I'm asking hard questions. And now that faith is not a virtue. The real virtue is not blind faith. It's intellectual humility, intellectual honesty. It's epistemic integrity, the courage to learn and to unlearn, the bravery to reevaluate, the willingness to say, I don't know, but I'm committed to finding out, and also to going wherever the truth takes me. We were taught so much about reverence, just honor God, revere God, listen to God, obey God. But, if we want to have a sort of a reverence, not for God, but for reality, for our real life, for this universe, in a sense, if we're going to have any kind of real reverence for our lives, you have to get to a point where you refuse to lie to yourself about what you can clearly, painfully see. And trauma recovery for us at its core is learning to tell ourselves that there is a clear world-shaking truth. And even if it shakes the fragile walls of our lives, of our formerly Christian identity, which was, it's all scripted for our safety, but even if it shakes us to our core, recovery involves getting to the truth. Faith, the way we were taught it, didn't let us truly see what our lives were all about, or what the path to truth. It was just submission to a system, regardless of that system's failures. This was you being forced to take a loyalty oath, and it didn't match reality, but you had to take it. And if you noticed in that process those inconsistencies, you were told you're the broken variable, you're the problem here, you're the prodigal son. And that's where we realized at deconversion, this is the essence of gaslighting. They're training you to distrust yourself, your mind, your body. But, outside of that system, faith doesn't have to mean anything bad. It doesn't mean self-abandonment, for sure. You can have, if you want to still use the word faith, and some people like to, have faith in yourself. Have faith in yourself. But let go of the old gods, as it were, not God Yahweh, but the old gods of faith as a virtue. You can rebuild yourself and rebuild even secure attachments within your spirit, after decades of this spiritual dependency. But it's faith in others to walk with you, not over you. Faith in others to not abuse you, not to deceive you. And we find relationships that sort of help us to co-regulate with an honesty, but no control. And we learn to sit in the mystery of life with it all. We're not going to take these prepackaged, fear-laced answers anymore. We're going to have faith in the process of healing ourselves and healing together as a community. We can have faith in human potential, but we're not going to have faith in divine intervention. That's for sure. We're going to have faith in the sense that we have hope that's tethered to reality, but not to doctrine. Real trust is earned. It's not demanded. And I think real growth for us at this point comes from not closing our eyes and taking that leap of faith. Just leap. Did you ever see forget which Indiana Jones movie it was, but there's the one where there's like the stone path, and you can't see it for some reason. There's some kind of optical illusion, but it looks like it's not there, and you have to literally like take the first step, and you'll see it's there. It's like, we're not doing that anymore. We're not going to close our eyes and just take a leap of faith. We're going to open our eyes very wide, take very slow embodied steps, and we're going to stay present in our uncertainty. The opposite of faith isn't doubt. It's asking the right questions. And when you let go of that old kind of faith, you really do start to gain courage, bravery. You have much clearer eyes. You have a grounded confidence. You trust your ability to evolve, no matter how important the old beliefs seem to you. Like, now where your path has to go. This kind of evolution is not a betrayal of you. This is the sincerest form of survival. You went through hell, you went through fire, and this is you evolving into something amazing. And honestly, if their God can't survive your questions, we have to ask, is your God even real to begin with? And healing from indoctrination is in many ways learning to come back to our minds, which have at this point arguably been through a lot of trauma, come back to our minds and our bodies, calm our hypervigilance down perhaps, breathe through the triggers, and to say, my curiosity is not dangerous. I am safe in my questions. My questions are a good place to be. My questions and my honest skepticism, not my snark, but my normal, gentle skepticism, my questions are a very safe place for me. And that for me was, if I can end on this, I'm going to do 3 sections today, but section 2 here, that for me is one of the best parts of this process, where you say to yourself, I really, really, really love to learn, and nobody can tell me what I can and can't read. There are no books that are banned. There are no topics off the table. I remember the first time I was looking at some of the works of Dennis MacDonald and some of the Greek epics. And I remember reading the story, I forget which section it's from or which book it's from, but where they compare the journey of one of the people in this Greek epics. And it's like the person goes here, then here, then here. They list the cities out here, then here, then here, then here, then here. And then you look at where Paul went, and it's the same cities in the same order, doing approximately the same things. And there were, hundreds, if not thousands of little things like that just kept on coming up. And I remember during my deconversion process, that feeling just a little bit scary. It's like, what am I seeing here? And again, during my process, I did not know I was headed to atheism. I was like, this is kind of crazy. It's kind of cool, but it's kind of crazy. And you get to a point where you say, I love learning. I love asking really hard questions. I love saying there's information that I needed, and it does make a difference. And I just want to encourage you, those of you that have been through that kind of trauma bonding where faith is everything. It's the hallmark of you being a good person, basically. And you're redefining now, what does it mean to be a good person? It seems like even in our world, someone, you look at a person of any kind, a pastor or something, like they're a man of the cloth. They've got so much faith. And it's like, that's somehow a badge of honor. Like, I don't think it's like the Princess Bride. I don't think that word means what you think it does. Like, being a man of faith in a God you've never seen and a book where you have no idea where it came from, like, that's not a badge of honor. And being godless is a badge of honor. I'm not ashamed of it. I am a proud apostate. I'm a proud heretic. I am, like, you don't know what it means. It is a beautiful thing to take the brave step of saying, there's no way I believe stuff unless you have really good evidence. And the evidence for Yahweh and Jesus is absolute zero. It's garbage. So I'm going to do one more section in a minute, but I'm going to go to a few comments here, and then we'll move on to the last part. My voice, thankfully, has held out tonight, so that's a good thing. Let's see here. I think George Carlin had it right. We're raising a bunch of snowflakes these days that can't even handle losing to tic-tac-toe. Yeah, 100%. Thank you. That being gullible has become part of me to my detriment and taking things at face value. Yeah, I would say for myself too. It's crazy. We definitely need to unlearn that in both big picture stuff and in our relationships. Blind faith. Yep. George Mueller, Wales and Britain. Religious gymnastics. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Susanna. Super chat from Susanna. I really appreciate your support so much. Forgot to write a message on it. This definitely opens our eyes and helps our minds align with reality. Thank you for your channel, Tim. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support so much, Susanna. Now the possibilities and to encourage our children to go with their hopes and dreams. I used to be mad if someone challenged my faith. Now I inwardly chuckle. Yeah, me too. It's funny. Sometimes you just got to laugh or otherwise you're going to cry, right? To be friends with someone who is not the same gender is a very basic, but was never allowed in the church whatsoever. Yeah, that's true too. It's interesting. All the little rules and hoops we had to jump through to be on the good side of the powers that be. Yeah, definitely have a drive to gain new information daily. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm gonna sort of bring us to a wrap up with, I think, a topic that's a little bit lighter in some ways, but I hope it's helpful here to wrap this one up with this topic. Our deconversion from Christianity changes us by showing us how Christianity taught you to fear your own body, and that reclaiming it is a revolution, your own personal revolution. So again, we're going to wrap up today with some comments about the body. I think all of us got the message loud and clear. Your body is either directly sinful, or at least it's a source of sin. It is definitely a liability to be managed. It's a wild thing that needs to be tamed. Your desires can be very dangerous, like a fire that you better not flame. Modesty was godliness. And all that put together with whether you're talking about purity culture, modesty culture, virginity culture, shame culture, it basically, in another way of putting it, and this is a little bit more snarky to say this, but to be holy in the context of Christianity basically requires you to be half alive. And that half of you that needs to die is your body. On this side of it, it's astonishing to us. Our bodies were never the enemy. And we were never really allowed to be embodied and never really be ours. We were, as I used the word before today, earlier today, colonized. We were colonized in the name of purity. Our bodies essentially got exiled. And now during your deconversion process, you are finally coming home to yourself, including to your body. But going back again to our time in Christianity, we were taught to feel ashamed so early. We were taught to feel ashamed, and we honestly, a lot of us were ashamed before we ever even remotely understood why. We had shame before our language could express it. Certainly we had guilt before any kind of consent, but there were subtle glances and raised eyebrows and whispers about purity and modesty. There were these cautionary tales. I remember, I've told this story I'm sure before at some point, but I remember as a young child hearing a young girl of 15 or 16, something like that, maybe younger, getting up in church on a Sunday evening and apologizing to the whole church that she'd gotten pregnant. The guy wasn't there. Who knows where he was? But this young girl, and I didn't even know what sex was. I didn't know what this was all about. But I knew that this teenager had gotten pregnant, and she had to apologize to the whole church over it to be somehow redeemable. And that stuff works. It works. By the time you hit adolescence, you are in a civil war with yourself. And every heartbeat, again, like I said in the last topic, you start to be like your own surveillance. The way your heart races, any tingles, tingles of your sensation on your skin, just that warmth inside of you, like, oh, that person's attractive, or I've got a crush on so-and-so. Even as little kids, you just kind of have the little puppy love crushes. And there was this sense of like, even that could be dangerous. And certainly anything that's more direct, like the longing to be touched or to feel pleasure, any sort of natural impulses, It was like a spiritual threat. And it almost felt in some ways, eventually, not at that young age, but eventually it almost feels like just being alive is a threat to your walk with God. Like the end goal is, I can't wait to be released from this body of sin. And it wasn't just like this body of sin in the sense of like this weak body, and I want a glorified body that never gets sick. Like, I want a body that doesn't tempt me, because temptation is, this is number one, could dishonor God. Number two, for some people, that's the path straight to hell. Like sex and sensuality were parts of our path to hell. And our bodies essentially, sort of metaphorically, became the crime scene. They were evidence of our inherent tendency to disobey. And you're covering them, of course. You're monitoring your body. You're apologizing for your body. You're ashamed of your body. And I don't know if this is just religion. I would say this might be part of culture, but I remember just for years noticing as a young man, just girls would walk into a room and they would hold their hands over their chest. It was like they just didn't want anyone to know that they might have curves. It was like it was so embarrassing to them. And I remember years later, even when this was when I was still a Christian, I was working on a book about the body. It was interesting. It was called Set Up to Fail. Set Up to Fail. I debated calling it Set Up and Designed to Fail, but basically Set Up to Fail. And it was about sexuality. And part of that, I did a lot of research, a lot of reading, but I did go to nudist camps a couple of times. And I remember just thinking, this is crazy. Like the body isn't this big temptation. This is just, it's so refreshing to just see the body completely apart from purity culture. Just we're humans. And to think that we were evolved from the animals. I mean, I didn't believe that at that point, but to know now we evolved from the animals. We're just part of the animal kingdom. And nobody needs to be ashamed for how their body works. I mean, can you imagine a male or female monkey or horse or turtle, anything, being embarrassed and having any kind of shame? And I remember, what is it that Mark Twain quote about, man is the only animal that blushes or needs to. And I'm like, well, why do we need to blush? Why are we blushing at our having bodies? But we were, it wasn't just about sex. I mean, it was about sometimes suppressing our hunger in general, both physical and emotional. It was just trusting our intuition. Our feelings are deceptive, avoiding pleasure for sure, unless it was redeemed in the context of marriage, disowning our desires. It was as if wanting anything physical was wicked. And I think a lot of us, even, it boiled down to stuff in some Christian contexts of like, don't even laugh too loud. If your laugh is too loud, if it's too free, too embodied, you're kind of a loose person. You're like a Jezebel. We learned to live much more strictly in our minds. Like, this is where you live, not here, you live here. And I remember sermons where they would say the greatest battles of your life, even the ones of physical stuff, they start in your mind. This is all about your mind. And we learn to live there and to disconnect from our bodies. This was part of walking by the Spirit. You disassociate and you obey. And you pray away your longings. You don't listen to them for sure. You don't acknowledge and honor them. You pray them away because your body is suspicious. They're temples of the Holy Spirit. And if you don't police them with shame, you're going to defile this temple of the Holy Spirit. He's going to be very, very unhappy with you. He's not going to feel like this is a pure, holy place for God to live. And so we were more focused on curating that holiness instead of inhabiting our humanity. And, our skin, everything, it was so sinful. But then we deconvert. And it changes. And suddenly there's no divine gaze watching you while you shower or, in any way judging you for anything about your body. There's no spiritual scorecard that's tracking your hormones. There's no omnipotent God up there weighing every heartbeat that you have against eternity. Like, are you a little bit too too carnal, too fleshly to be deserving to go into heaven, or for me to walk with you in a good relationship. There's just you and your body. That's it. It's just you and your body. And that can be very disorienting at first because you're so used to this context of your body being such a place of judgment, and your worth is very strictly defined by what you do in your body. But it's like you're waking up in a house that you've lived in your whole life, but you've never explored it. And you feel weird and awkward. Like this is my home. I can recognize this is my real home. But I've only been in one like closet. I've never like seen the living room and the dining room and all the other rooms here. This is a pretty cool place. But you feel awkward and exposed and untethered, and you wonder, is this amount of joy going to count as sin? And if you look at yourself and admire yourself, like, oh, I feel beautiful today. I feel whatever. I feel good. You're like, am I being prideful? And you have all these shifts that happen. And of course, you're no longer a Christian. You're no longer praying for purity, but you begin to give yourself the freedom to say, what does pleasure mean? And maybe I should stop monitoring my modesty so much. And maybe I should be focused much more on discovering my sensuality. And maybe instead of apologizing for my body to other people or to myself, I should just start coming home to my body. And you're not rebelling, you're just restoring wholeness and integrity, and then you're integrating your whole personhood. Your body was never trying to betray you. It was trying to communicate with you. Every desire, every shiver, every ache was like a language. And again, I use the word language a lot. I know I'm being repetitious, but excuse me, whenever you have this kind of indoctrination like we had in Christianity, you have to understand there was a language that they were given which helped you to describe and to use the words that they wanted you to, but by definition, they pushed away all the other words. You didn't know what other words were out there. And it's like your body had its own language, but you don't speak it. But you should speak it because you have a body. It's like, it's like growing up in Japan and not speaking Japanese. Like, that doesn't make sense. How can you grow up in the middle of Japan and never speak Japanese? You must have been really, really sheltered and secluded from what was right there around you. Well, yeah, you were secluded from what was literally you. You were secluded from yourself. And we have this invitation to listen to our bodies, to learn that the body is not like this test, this cosmic test. You're going to pass it or you're going to fail it. Your body is like a teacher that you can trust. And your pleasure is not a corrupt part of you. It's about the connection that you have with yourself, with others, and with the world. Your appetites are not sin. They're signals that you're human. And that's beautiful. And touch, wanting to touch or be touched, it's not a temptation. And so you can begin to say to yourself, I can want things, including sensual and erotic things. I can want those things without any shame. I can enjoy touch without any fear, and I'm going to eat without apologizing. I'm going to be embodied, and I'm going to breathe the air, and I'm going to soak in the sunlight. And I know that there are some different places you can go where they really do all kinds of like tantric yoga and things. I think some of those can go way too far, but I will admit I have an admiration for those groups where they really spend a lot of time just trying to get you to just love and feel your body. And I was actually just interviewing someone last night who is a cult expert, and she was talking about how there are these cults, that really suck you in, and you have to be careful. So I acknowledge that, but I think there are some that are just very basic. They're just trying to say you don't love your body. You've never loved your body. You've never really been friends with your body. And it doesn't have to include sexuality per se, just any aspect of your embodiment. You've never really done that. This is a threshold you have yet to cross, and you should have crossed it, all throughout your childhood and teenage years to the time you were a young adult and just felt so happy to be in your flesh. But the flesh was just so vilified for us. You can be sensual and spiritual in whatever way you want to. You can be sensual and spiritual and sane and healthy and grounded all at the same time. And your body in a sense, if I could give it a voice, your body is saying, I belong to you, but you're not taking very good care of me. I'm your friend. I'm your home. This is not a battleground. This body, my body, it's a compass. It's a source of wisdom, and I'm here to help you. I'm not a liability. And if you listen to that long enough, you begin to really inhabit yourself. And again, you stop policing yourself. You stop trying to purify what was already, in a sense, amazing and even miraculous. And it's not about being selfish. It's you're protesting against a theology and a worldview that made embodiment effectively a crime. A God who needs you to distrust your body in order to fully love and be loyal to him deserves no devotion. Anything that demands your disembodiment is not love. It's control. And so you are beginning this long, hopefully very gentle work of coming home to yourself, coming home to your mind, coming home to your body, coming home to your skin, coming home to your sexuality. And you're learning a new language. And that takes time. It takes, no one's going to say, hey, I want you to learn Russian in the next week. It's going to take some time. I took Japanese myself for 2 years, and that's a hard ass language to learn. Just the kanji, the alphabet is crazy, but it takes a while to learn a new language. You are reintroducing yourself to your own skin, and that's a language. And one breath at a time, one nerve ending at a time, you're going to come home to yourself, and you're going to be going through a reunion with your body, and you feel your pulse, feel the warmth. It's like this fragile electricity that's all in you. It's not sin. It's life. And it's been trying to talk to us. It's been trying to give us the words and the language. It's been trying to reach us. And we've been ignoring it for so long. And so much of our healing process is going to be part of this process of embodiment. So I do hope that, again, I'm not trying to focus this on sexuality. I think that's a huge, beautiful part of it, but it's more than that. A lot of us would, have no problem with some of those things, but there's something about us that just still feels like our bodies are like chains. Our bodies are like, I can't wait to be freed from this. Or we feel like if you have any kind of spirituality, it's kind of like, doing the meditation and kind of having an out-of-body experience. No, you don't need to be out of your body. An out-of-body experience is not the goal. You get to give yourself to yourself. Your body is your best friend. And your body's begging you to walk with it, and your body's begging you to take care of it. And the more that you take care of your body, and I don't mean in a healthy sense necessarily, just the more that you take care of and love your body, the more that your body in a sense will help you to love yourself in all the other ways. So I know we could dig into that one for probably a couple hours, but I just wanted to, again, all these are more like introductions to the topic. So I'm going to read a few comments here, and then we'll wrap it up for the night. Let's see here. Susanna says, was trapped and caged and was never able to healthily bloom. Yeah, I think that's when we're in such a point of shame at the time of our puberty, you should be at the most joyful blooming part, to just be like, I've got curves, whatever. I've got sexuality. I've got sensuality. I've got feelings. I've got hormones. How beautiful is this? And I remember thinking, I remember when I was in Bible college, the dean of men got all the male students together one night, and he got us all in this one big room. And I thought it was going to be, let's talk about how to honor God and be more fervent in our love for him and our appreciation of the gospel, and just talk about his death and resurrection and the blood. And just one big message, guys, stop the masturbating, stop it. And I thought for years, at what point do we celebrate? I mean, I think the average male body produces is it 50,000 sperm per hour? Some big number. I'm like, didn't our God make us that way? Don't we believe that our God made us that way? So he made sex urgent and overpowering. And we're going to basically fault him for that and effectively hate our bodies. The cognitive dissonance was just on steroids in that realm. It's crazy. Purity was seen as the highest honor. Yeah. Yeah. You're like a rose, and you got to keep all the petals healthy and there, and don't let anybody touch them until it's, till the wedding day. Situation arose when a girl was ashamed for her shape. Yeah. Yeah. I remember I interviewed one girl years ago on this channel where she said she was a worship leader, and she was just up front, and she was just praising God, just God, I love you. And it was, I guess, one of those churches where there's a little bit more, movement, a lot of intensity in the worship team, but she had curves, and somebody said, man, I'm distracted because, her boobs are all over the place because she's so excited. And she felt so ashamed. Like, how can you, in the place where you would think this is the place to celebrate how God made us, this is the place where we have the most shame. Like, what are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to ourselves? I've just entered a new decade, and the first decade without the shame and guilt of Christianity, thinking God was watching. Yeah, it's amazing when you realize nobody's watching. There's no camera in your head. Finding freedom in this area is, again, a process, but an essential adult basic care of itself. Knowing my own body was an alien concept. Yep, for sure. Great to see you, Starsky Chan. The Virgin Mary is the highest value in the Catholic Church. Virginity is upheld as the most holy. Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. It's perfect. Like, if you could just be the most holy person, you'd be basically the Virgin Mary. That's why she got the honor she did, because she was so holy. Dreamed my organic head was attached to my mechanical body by a glass jar as my neck, and then my head fell off when I walked under the threshold. Oh, that's horrible. That's a horrible dream. To get to know oneself in body and mind is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Yeah, well said, well said. So true about being in your body. Thank you, Tongless. Appreciate your support. I'm sorry, Tony Gillis. I was reading that wrong. Tony Gillis. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate your support so much. Well, again, I'm just going to mention to everybody, I'll be sending out a sign-up sheet probably tomorrow, I hope, for a poetry slam, which is going to be not this Saturday, which is the 1st of November, but next Saturday, the 8th at 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to have a sign-up for a poetry slam. I would love to have anybody that's either done poetry or is open to writing something, put some poetry together, and let's just share where our hearts are. Share where our hearts are. It's just, you've got so much inside of you that's just waiting to come out and express your journey. Poetry can be a beautiful part of that. So anyone that feels led by the Spirit to be part of that, when you see the sign-up sheets shortly, please sign up if you can. I'd love to have you. If you forget, you can just show up last minute. But I'd love to know who's coming. And also, again, I'm going to be continue to do live streams. My goal is to do several tomorrow, Saturday. If I can do it, I've even got 3 scheduled for Sunday and go forth. So I've got a lot I'm trying to do and accomplish. And part of it is I'm trying to obviously be part of the community more than ever. I'm also trying to grow the channel. So anything you can do to support in terms of just letting people know or liking the videos, I really appreciate it. I really do. Every little bit, even if it's not financial, just liking the videos and sharing them when you have a chance, it makes a difference. So thank you all so much for being a part of my life, and I will see hopefully some or all of you tomorrow. So have a great evening. Thanks so much. And again, it's going to play the music as we wrap up here. And if you want to listen to it, I love this song, by the way. I love it. I'm not going out without a fight. So thanks again. Have a great night.